Welcome to the next episode of the Entrepreneurial Excellence podcast. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Gonzalo Enei to the show today. This is a little bit of a special episode for us. It's kind of, we're trying something new, kind of basically like entrepreneurial excellence shorts. The focus being on really specific topics with really interesting founders. Maybe not quite enough for a long episode, but something shorter, really focused. Gonzalo is one of the first. He and I sat down. He's actually a customer of my company, Levy. And we sat down for a coffee just to meet in person. And we ended up talking about what it means to be a founder from Latin America who decides to move to the expensive San Francisco Bay Area and the decisions that went into that. And I thought that is so interesting and fascinating that our audience might enjoy it and want to hear why they should maybe move to the Bay Area, or maybe why not. Certainly for Latin American founders, but maybe anyone else in the world who is considering that. And then, of course, on top of it, Gonzalo has this amazing background that certainly makes him an excellent entrepreneur. I'm sure he will say he has a lot further to go, but a little bit of background about him as well. He has founded 3 different companies, one of those being a safari company, another one a media company, then his current one, perhaps, which is an AI kind of AI collaboration workflow tool. He also worked for one of the top law firms in Latin America, and he was also the 11th employee at Finchule. For those who in Latin America know, that is one of the top tier startups in Latin America, backed by some of the world's best venture capitalists. So, Gonzalo, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Adam. I'm really excited to be here.
So maybe go back in your history a little bit. Like, let's just get started, right? So did you grow up? You're from Chile, Santiago. Is that where you grew up, where you were born? Are your family entrepreneurial? What kind of put you on the path to say, I'm going to do this crazy thing and start lots of companies?
Yeah, a good question. So I was born in Santiago, Chile. I lived there until I was 5. And then I moved with my family to Tokyo, and I spent 7 years there. So between the ages of 5 and 12, I grew up in a very sort of like extremely different place, comparing it to Santiago.
Do you speak Japanese now?
Not really, no. I was in an international school. So my main language during that period of time was English.
Okay.
And at home we continued speaking Spanish, but I would most of my day-to-day stuff, my thinking, that was in English, and it became very like strongly rooted in me, I guess. And the reason we moved to Tokyo was because of my dad's job. And while he had a job for a company, a big forestry company, and he opened up the Asia branch for that company. So
wow.
This was in the 90s, so it was a period of time where I had to sort of like open up the Chilean economy to the world economy, and opening it up to Asia in that period of time meant setting up in Tokyo. Right now, it's probably Shanghai or somewhere else, maybe, not necessarily Japan. But in that, it was and so that's why we moved. So why in the strictest sense. My dad wasn't an entrepreneur. He was employed, but the type of job that he was doing was in fact very sort of entrepreneurial.
And was that rare? I mean, so walk me through the sort of background of folks in Chile or maybe Latin America. Was that especially at that time period relatively rare for people to have even more jobs, maybe international companies, but certainly go work abroad in a pretty foreign place like Japan?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was rare. It's sort of like rare to live abroad, but if anyone were to live abroad, it would probably be to another like Western country, I guess. So moving to Japan was a big deal. There was no like real internet when we moved. It was like still fax, I guess. Like
wow.
the quickest way to like
your family. Like obviously your core family went with you, but like your aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone else, like maybe make a phone call once a month or something, but it was not like FaceTime today where you can talk to anyone anytime.
Totally. And I did speak English. My parents didn't speak, their English at the time wasn't very good. So it was a big move. It was a big adventure. Like seriously sort of like I guess, risky in a lot of ways, fun in so many, and many others. And we got to experience the world. Chile is a great place. It is very remote though, and it's very sort of like small and encapsulated, especially back in the day, right? So it was a big change.
And so how do you think that led, if at all, to the entrepreneurial journey that you've now gone on? Like, what was it sounds like you had a relatively straightforward plan for life for a while, at least, right? I must have gone to university, got a law degree, go work at a big law firm, all standard steps. You're doing all the things. So what changed to move you say, I'm going to leave this cushy law job and become an entrepreneur? Like, what is that mindset that you had at the time to push you in that direction?
Yeah. So after I was 12, I moved back to Santiago and I did like middle or high school there, and I studied university in Santiago and became a lawyer. And as you mentioned, sort of like got this job at this very like famous law firm, and there was like a secure path forward in a way. But to be honest, I personally didn't enjoy the sort of like the legal work that much. And I had also minored in business. So I was very curious about that aspect of things too.
I didn't realize that. It's funny. You and I have a law degree and a business degree. I have a JD and an MBA.
Okay.
For some big law firms. And I was like, I think I enjoy business better. And so I went in that direction too. But okay, keep going.
So I guess that's what sort of happened. I was still in my 20s when I was working at this law firm. So it was, I felt I had a period of time to give the business side of things a shot, right? And this sort of like ties back to my more international experience, in a way I felt that I felt very connected to felt very connected to what's going on in the US and other countries because of this experience in sort of Tokyo. And I was very like attracted to cool businesses that were going on that weren't common in Chile. And those businesses were startups, right? There weren't that many.
How were you learning about them? Like, how was that something you even knew about?
But that's a good question.
Like, do you think there was like a level of curiosity? Like, you had obviously internet at that point. It was like a level of curiosity that you had that you think just maybe made you different than some of your other friends that you grew up with? Or like, what was it? Like, oh, I want to learn about this thing called startups.
Yeah, for sure. It was like just first awareness that there's other ways of doing things beyond sort of like what was common in Chile, right? And seeing on the news, because of the stuff I read, I've always like normally gravitated towards media or books in English. So because of that, all that sort of like context, I knew that there was companies that were doing really interesting things in terms of moving progress forward, I guess is the thing that attracted me to it. They were just doing some things that are different, innovative, and that made me like, when choosing like a business, and to choose something that I felt was related, that had that aspect to it, that aspect of innovation and moving things forward. And I knew that it was possible because I see it's possible because there's so many like huge success cases in the US and elsewhere, and I'm familiar with them because of my background. So that's a way
Then why what made you decide to go quit your job, go found what is Medio?
El Vasomeriano. Yeah. It means the glass half full. So it was it was a digital media company.
Why go found that? That wasn't what your legal stuff was. I mean, maybe it was. What was like, I'm going to go found this media company.
Yeah. So at the time, like there were some examples of media companies that were growing really big in the US because of like digital media and mechanisms of getting your content around like social media, for example. So it was at that period of time, right? Like 2014, 2015. There was this business case that I was aware of, and I've always liked content. So I thought it was a good fit. I thought it would be fun. I thought it would be fun to create content and figure out a way to get people to see it, to consume it in some way, and to work with a team that was creative and that it could be a business, right? So I chose it because of all those reasons. And it's super far away from like law, because I think in a way I wanted to like just get away from law, as far away from law as I could, which is like is a more reactive thing. I use tons of the stuff I learned in law school now, sure. but yeah, that was my thinking at that period of time.
And did you raise money for it, friends and family? Like, how did you get that off? Like, you're skipping over maybe a difficult step, right? Which is where you're going from big law, good job.
Yeah.
I need to go tell your parents I'm quitting this job. I'm sure they were very proud of you that you had it. And maybe mom and dad, can you help fund this crazy new idea that I have that is in an area I've never done before? Like, how did you get along that path?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I had some savings I sold some things too to get some money. And so very bootstrapped. We spent very little money and especially like in terms of what you need or what you would have needed in the US to start something like that. We were still back in Santiago, so it's a lot cheaper. And I had some savings, and I also had the support of my wife. We were just married, and she had a good job, and she was very supportive. She was actually encouraging. She saw I wasn't happy in the law firm, and she's I guess pushed me in the right direction and said, "Hey, we still have a chance. We don't have kids. We don't need to spend much. You can do this." And
okay, so how big did you get it? How big did it grow? What was the end?
The company, yeah. So the company grew to we had millions of viewers per month. The highest it got to was like 23 million monthly content views between like posts, videos, the stuff we would put out there. So that's pretty amazing. It was like huge amount of traffic. It was more than many sort of like traditional media outlets in Chile. However, and though we did monetize, it was not a huge business for us because, well, it turns out advertising isn't that great of a business model except for Google and Facebook.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Yeah, or Meta right now.
Did you shut it down? Did you sell it? What happened?
Yeah, we put it on autopilot. We started repeating the content we had, and that still sustained a pretty healthy level of viewership for a few years actually, because we had created so much content, and then we just automated the ads. And then, so it was like a stream of passive income while I was doing other things.
That's great.
I'm like the Safari company, and then.
So go quickly into that. So I want to go quickly through these things and really talk about like moving to the US. But like, why do a Safari company then? Or you just, I'm so burnt out on tech stuff. I want to travel. I'm going to find a way to fund it myself. What was that about?
It was very much less deliberate. It kind of happened by accident. We had done with my family. We had done this big like safari trip, and it was really hard to organize. It was just like, because I wasn't very familiar with Africa, we wanted it to be a nice experience. And for some reason or another, I ended up organizing it. And I found this very cool company that did these experiences that few other companies did, like hikes in nature, hikes in the Serengeti, right? Like places that are super, super wild, amazing. Very few like companies had these permits, and it wasn't crazy expensive. So it was just great value. So I felt that there was like an opportunity there to get more people to experience that, and thought it would be fun basically. And a lot of people started asking me about these safaris and these things back when I got back home. And so I ended up like organizing their trips and becoming an agent for a while. And that lasted for a few years, mainly as a side sort of thing that I did. And it was a lot of fun. But I did realize that I wanted to get back into tech. And I think, so yeah, that's
so you got back, that was running, got a ton of travel, got back into tech. Why go to Finchule? Like, why end up going there? You were employee number 11. Sounds like, like, what's it, friend, luck? Why did they hire you?
They hired me because.
Were they Chilean based or just?
They're Chilean, yeah. So they're Finchule. A lot of people haven't heard of it, but it's a wealth management company, like Betterment or Wealthsimple, but for LatAm. It's based in Chile. It's right now assets under management. Finchule has over $1 billion of general ordinary people's money. You don't need to be rich to invest. It's all digital. It's like high quality investment for everybody. And the founders are Chilean, and they're the first Chilean company ever to get into Y Combinator. And with my media startup, I had gone to an in-person interview in YC. So they had flown us out. We had gone to the interview. Unfortunately, we didn't get in. And like a year later or something, Finchule gets in. So obviously, because I'm familiar with Y Combinator and I'm familiar with like Chilean startup scene, this catches my eye, right? And then when I started listening to the things they had written or the talks that sort of like the founders had done, I realized that the team was extremely exceptional. And that if I was going to employ myself anywhere, it had to be in a place like this. It's just such an amazing group of people, amazing mission. And fortunately, I had learned enough about growth because I had grown this media company to millions of people that I thought I could contribute to that aspect of what Finchule was doing. And they saw it the same way, and they hired me as the head of growth. And yeah, so when I got there, Finchule had 2,000 clients, and by the time I left 4 years later, we had 85,000 clients.
That's crazy.
Sequoia invested during my time there as well. So it was just, we grew from like a team of 15 people to over 200 people. So it was just like this very sort of like explosive thing that caught on.
You had like 80 people reporting to you, right? For a while.
Yeah. Like I was one of the like 3 people who were in charge of this area that had 80 people in it. Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay. So you do Finchule. It's going great. Why leave and then go build perhaps?
Yeah. I guess I have the startup bug and the entrepreneurial bug like in me or something. I just really like things out and the whole challenge of having a company. And I had met some people that felt the same way in Finchule, and I thought they were great. And I don't know, just the timing felt strangely right. I'm not sure if it, like objectively it was a great time, but we felt that we wanted to do it and that we needed to do it and that we needed to be quick about it. And so we just did. And it turns out it was good timing because it was like for the world, everyone was just realizing how like the advances in LLMs and Gen AI that were going on, and that there was going to be needs for product teams to actually put this and give this knowledge like a great level of like application. And so that's when we were starting our company and thought that we could do something interesting and like with this technology that's just such a strong inflection point for our industry.
And so did you found the company in Santiago?
Yeah, we started the company in Santiago, but we were thinking of being international right from the start. We never had a corporation in Chile. So it was always a Delaware C Corp, and that's it. Like it was international, like US based from the start, at least on paper. And then our product evolved, our vision evolved. We were able to raise a pre-seed round and move here. And that's where we're at now.
Walk me through all of the thinking there. It's like, why Santiago? I don't know the exact cost of living differences, but I'm sure it's way cheaper than the San Francisco Bay Area.
Like a third.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a big savings, big difference.
Yeah.
And also you're probably like, you got your family in Santiago. You're probably like a big fish in maybe a smaller sea, but like a big fish, like well-known, getting to know people. Why uproot? You have 3 kids. Why uproot all of that to come to the United States and in the Bay Area?
Yeah. I think if you can do it, then the opportunity is amazing. Like especially when there's such a big technology shift. Like AI really is, I believe, an extremely important technology that will change so many things about like how software is built, used, and how society thus will like function. I think it's a big deal. And
probably an understatement. Yes, it's going to be a huge deal.
Yeah. The Bay Area, when these kind of things happens, like the Bay Area sort of like tends to bring a lot of the people who are thinking about these things to it. So everyone like flocks here and concentrates on collaborating and working together and competing, and sort of like the ideas are sort of like floating around here, and so is the money, right? And so is like so many things. So it just makes it a really interesting place for technology in general, and particularly when there's like a big shift going on. And we realized that, and we realized increasingly as we sort of like got closer to the frontier of knowledge, like around AI and AI application, we realized that the people who we started to follow, the people who really knew about this stuff, we're all here, right? They're on the Bay Area, and they get together, and you can just see on Twitter that they had this meetup and they're talking. And so you start feeling left out, right? If you want to be on that knowledge frontier, right? So it became evident to us and where we want to take the company, what we want to do as a company, that we should be here. And it involves, making sacrifices for sure, like in terms of for the family, for your network, but also opportunity. And so I guess it's a bet, right? This is a bet for us. It's something we're excited about as well. So we got to make the most of it. That's the feeling. Yeah.
Thus far, how long have you been in the Bay Area now?
For 3 months.
Okay. So still pretty early and new, but enough time for you to get some vibe and feeling of whether it was a good choice. How are you feeling so far with that decision?
No, great. I love it here. It's amazing. It's just, I've been to these events lately where the people who are talking are people who I just used to watch on like podcasts. and maybe watch over and over again. Oh my God, this is just high level of things of what they're saying, their opinions are. Everyone understands what's going on. Everyone in the audience, and the people in the audience afterwards, you can talk to them, and they also have like interesting viewpoints. Not everyone does, of course, but it's like the general sort of like sense of this. These are my people, right? These are my people. They're talking about things I'm interested in, and they're concentrated here. So it's just incredible. And maybe it's because it's been warm and sunny, and it's just been really nice in terms of that too. It is expensive, but I think the city is amazing.
Yeah, I'm certainly biased and have been here 14 years, but I think even in wintertime, it's pretty nice. It'll be colder and rainier, certainly, but not by a lot. We'll talk maybe 6 to 9 months and you can tell me what you
Yeah. Yeah,
but
for sure.
Truly,
Yeah.
it should be great. But okay, so walk through like this sort of nitty gritty of, I don't know the details of how does someone with a Chilean passport be able to come to the US, live in the US, rent in the US, all those other things. Like if I'm someone in Latin America trying to follow your footsteps, what are the things I would have to do?
Yeah. Okay. So, I'm not an immigration or visa expert, but at least from what I've seen, I can say that Chileans are quite lucky because there's a special category of visa that only Chileans and people from Singapore qualify for.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So there's this visa, it's called an H-1B1 visa.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone sponsors you here to work, and then you have certain qualifications and certain professional, like you have certain professional titles and you fit into a profile that allows it, then it's pretty straightforward to get that visa. And once you do, then you can move here and you can get a social security number and everything you need to live in the US and pay taxes.
Well, lucky you for that part. So
that's one way.
That's one way.
And if you are an entrepreneur and you have done interesting things, then and this is more broadly applicable to the world, other Latin American countries, there's a visa called an O1 visa, which my co-founders got. So it's an alien of extraordinary ability, I think is the name of and there's this guy who's I've seen him on Twitter that he's created these sweaters where he's printed alien of extraordinary ability, and some really notorious or like tech founders have bought them and are wearing them. So I got to get one for my co-founders. Yeah. And that's a way to also, as an entrepreneur, to come to the US and get that visa and just be able to function here. And it's really, I think it's really important that exists.
So do you think then if you're a Latin American founder or someone who wants to come to the US, be in the Bay Area, would you say, hey, go start some companies in your local region and go prove yourself out first? Like, what would be the steps you would say? You didn't jump straight to moving to the Bay Area. It took you 2 or 3 startups before you made it out here.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm sure there's like many ways to do this. Some people, you want to be a founder, start a company. And then I think you can start with the idea of making something global from the start. It's sort of like a natural inclination I see a lot with Latin founders, is that they believe they can only start companies in Latin America. And I think
why do they think that?
I think it's because it makes sense in a lot of ways, in the sense that they have an unfair advantage, right? They know the region, or they know certain countries in the region, so they think that sort of sets them up for greater success. I also think a lot of Latin American founders take what's worked in the US and apply it to Latin America. I think as a
traditional path, people all over the world say, this worked in the US, I'm going to go build it in my country.
Exactly. I think if you're going to be a good tech founder, you're going to start an interesting company, then in some way or another, you have to be living in the future, right? And one of the ways to live in the future and also get some validation for your future is to see what's going on in a place that's more advanced, and then bring it back to your to your present. So basically have a look at what's going on in the US, the future, and bring it to the present, Chile or Peru or Mexico or wherever, right? So that works, right? And that's why a lot of founders choose to do that. But I feel I'd like to see more founders who try to travel to the future and sort of like invent something for the future, like itself. And so it really depends on what you like and what your goals are, what your ambition is. And so there's many ways to do it. But I believe there's a lot of like accelerators that accept first-time founders. And I see a lot of like people from Asia even, they come and start a company for the US directly right away. And maybe they're first-time founders. They have skills, right? They got tech skills or marketing skills or something.
Do you think there's like a mental reason why like Asian founders might come and start things in the US for the US versus Latin American founders not doing that?
Yeah, I think there's cultural reasons, more ambition. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is, but I think there's probably is something cultural about it.
So I'm curious of a friend of mine. I was having a chat earlier this week with him and actually tweeted this out. He lives in Europe right now. He lives in Spain. And he said, when I have kids, I want to move back to the United States for their education, which I was shocked by because education in the US isn't necessarily known as being wonderful. It's okay. And I asked him why. And he said, because in the one word, ambition. He said in Europe, ambition is a dirty word and you're looked down upon and people think you're wrong, that you're ambitious and trying to better yourself. And he said in the US, it's viewed as something really positive. Does that resonate with you as a Latin American founder and then even for your own kids now that they're in school in the US versus in Chile?
Yeah. It's too soon to say regarding like my kids and the particular school they're at, but I feel that people in the US are generally unashamedly trying to do something important with their lives. And I feel that's like when people do achieve that, then it's celebrated. So there's that, like a traditional sort of like Chilean standpoint or more Latin America, Catholic countries tend to be, and that's frowned upon. Like, do not show off. If you're going to give in secret. It's just, I think it comes from that, like how you treat donations. Donations here are incredible. Like people put your name up on the thing. Sure. This family donated and it'll be here as long as they continue to donate. It's very public. And that can be shocking in a way, but I think it's a thing, it's incentives are important. And so I do think there's a cultural difference there that might seem subtle, but has important effects and like cumulative effects. And also in the US, you can dream big. For sure. There is no limit to how big your dreams can be. And in some way or another, they're quite possible, right? And I think that because of economic size, level of bureaucracy, level of like where things are on a cultural level, I cannot make the same sort of like a statement regarding Latin America.
And I guess also because Latin America is just, there's so many different countries spread apart and they're all slightly different, I'm sure. It makes it harder to unify.
That's also like 100%. That's also, I think, a common mistake is to think the Latin American economy is X, maybe it's like half of the US if you take the whole of Latin American countries. But setting up in one place, in one country, and then setting up in the other, and then setting up in the other is actually quite cumbersome. It's not, it has a lot of friction involved and a lot of like regulatory processes and even like marketing, like your marketing message across involves so much nuance. Easy to get stuck in the trap of thinking that it's all like just one big region and that it's as easy to access as like the whole of the US.
What about failure too? Like how is failure treated in Latin America? So we talked about ambition, but how do you compare failure to, right? The fact that when you're a startup founder, the likely outcome is you will fail. Like that is the default likely chance is that you will fail.
Yeah.
And failure scares a lot of people, but like how does that, how do people view that in Latin America, maybe from what you compare, what you've seen in the US? I
hear that the US is very like tolerant with people who take big swings and miss, as long as they're smart and trustworthy. As long as they did their best and they didn't like screw anybody over and they were transparent, all like these things, then we're going to give you another shot, almost as long as it takes, right? That's what I hear. But I haven't been here long enough to see if it is actually that way. I don't think it's as forgiving. I think we're more critical, at least in Chile, with that kind of thing. We have this term in Chile, it's called being chaquetero. It just means being really hard on someone when they're down, right?
Yeah. So it's not a good thing to be mean on someone.
No, it's not a good thing to be a chaquetero. It's like,
okay.
Yeah.
So you want to be supportive. And then what about one last question on this topic? What about family? How does your family view your move here? How do they view you being a startup founder? Sounds like your family's probably pretty supportive, but what have you also seen with your friends and what do people think? I don't know, maybe you have a conservative grandma or something who's decided to move to the US. You took my grandchildren to the US. You're going to go do something crazy in the startup.
Yeah. And so I think this surprised me when I had like a farewell party a few months ago when we left Chile, and friends came, family came, and they were so supportive, man. It was like, so we had gotten some press because of the pre-seed and this thing that we're moving to the US. And I think it made them proud in a way. So they were like, get them, man. So I feel a lot of like support and love from people there. And so it's been, I can't say, and obviously I understand that my family is very close. Latin American families are quite close. So obviously we like, especially my kids, they're missed. And I miss them too. I miss like family back home and everything, but people are like proud, and that feels good.
And so it's worth the trade-off. So I have two questions that I ask on every single podcast episode. One I usually ask at the beginning, but I'm asked both of them at the end. The first one though is about like, when you think through building perhaps in the other companies you've run, what is the definition to you of excellence? What is an excellent entrepreneur? What does that look like? Who do you emulate yourself after? What are the actions that you try to take? Of course, if there's things that you do you think that are informed by your experiences or things being a Latin American founder, please talk about that.
So I think great founders and great people in general things forward in a way. So they empower people to do things that previously weren't possible. And hopefully all of humanity, if you can get as big as that, right? And so I feel that I think it's important as a founder to go for that wholeheartedly. It's not about like making a quick buck, and it's not about like just doing things that everyone else is doing. I think it's really like fun and valuable when people just sort of like genuinely innovate in the truest sense of the word, I guess.
Are there any founders generally or Latin American wise that you look up to or you think about when you're building your company?
Yeah, like I'm a huge fan of Dylan Field, founder of Figma.
Yep.
I love their story. I love the way they were enamored by this new technology, which was WebGL, allowed them to render all sort of animation graphics on the web, and figured out their way into design and the importance of software design, and then turning that into like an amazing product with really high standard. I love really good products. That's also like, besides like what I just said about being an entrepreneur, I also think like taste and making really nice products is something I admire. And I think they've done that with Figma.
How can folks get in touch if they want to learn more about what you're doing at Perhaps, if they want to learn more about how to make a move to the United States or to the Bay Area, or even whether they should? Where can they find you?
Yeah, just have them. I'm on X, Enei Gonzalo. So they can find me there and just DM me. I'll be happy to chat.
Amazing. And is it getperhaps.com where they can find more about your company?
Yep. Getperhaps.com. You can find out more about the company and sign up for the waitlist. We'll be giving early access out soon.
Amazing. Everyone should be excited for that. If you want to live in the future, start trying Perhaps. So thank you so much again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.